Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about the gods in Total War Pharaoh Dynasties. And in this video, I'm just going to go over what I consider to be the best and the worst gods for every single civilization. And we're going to start over here with Egypt. I could go over every single god, but to some extent it is redundant because there are certain gods that do obviously have similar effects. But anyway, let's start with Egypt, and let's start with what I consider to be the best god overall of Egypt, and that would be Horus. The reason Horus is so great is he reduces movement on land for enemy armies in region wherever you build a shrine, and by the way, you want to build shrines as much as possible. He does give you a charge bonus on recruitment and influence. Those two are not necessarily too important. It is really the prayer benefit and the devoted general benefit that makes Horus so great. He gives you 36% movement at sea and land, and also crucially gives you attrition immunity in the desert if you do pray, which is actually quite significant for Egypt. For instance, Isis can give you the same attrition immunity, but all she does is reduce happiness and influence in an enemy province or region, which is not necessarily quite as good. Though, to be clear, Isis does have her own benefits. The thing about this, there's going to be many gods that are going to kind of be in that middle path, where they offer some benefits, but they're not quite the most extreme ones. Also, one thing to point out about gods is that you can worship a series of gods and get stacking benefits of the similar kind if you do unlock them, or if you use the campaign customization option to have them unlocked. So Horus is, from my point of view, easily one of the best gods for Egypt. What about another one? Well, it would be Thoth. The reason Thoth is so great is not for the happiness benefit, but he gives you a couple of very, very significant benefits. One, he gives you construction time -2 for management and military support buildings, pretty useful, and construction costs for resources, management, military support. So really useful god to have under your control. His prayer reduces the labor cost for an army by -36%. You know how I complained about the fact that you do have to spend multiple points to make Yolosapien points? Well, Thoth just gives you that kind of benefit inherently. And then, crucially, he gives you 22 armor for a devoted general, even if you can only have one, and 70% lethality. Of course, the best god of Egypt is a 10 because you can combine whatever benefits you want over there, but all the same, it's just worth pointing this out. Okay, so those are the two best gods, as far as I see it, for Egypt. What are the two worst? And keep in mind, Egypt does have a very, very large portion, very large number of gods available. Well, one of the worst ones would actually be Ra. You might say, well, he gives you 10 workforce growth. Yeah, that's kind of useful, except that there's, other benefits like Isis's benefit. So if you're looking for workforce growth, there are other things you can go for. Melee defense on recruitment, not particularly important. Recruitment rank, kind of okay, but just not really that great. Morale for an army, damage resistance versus missiles, kind of useful, but just not quite as great as other things. I would say like campaign benefits generally trump battle benefits, because if you can have a very strong campaign situation, that will lead you to having a very strong army inherently. So things like melee attack and melee damage, just not particularly great. So Ra is not particularly great, and then you have a moon. A moon gives you influence in a province. Ooh, great. And then a couple of experience benefits. But experience benefits would be great if experience actually mattered as much as you might think it does. It's not quite as important, at least within this game. Could be useful, but just not quite as important as some of the other benefits that are available for a lot of the other gods in this game. I mean, you can even argue that Osiris is not a particularly great god for Egypt either. So if you're looking to play an Egyptian campaign, I'd recommend Thoth, I'd recommend Horus. And if you do get that third choice, you can go with Fa, who gives you flat out gold for every single shrine if it's prosperity. Keep in mind, it's every single shrine. That can stack up to an enormous amount of gold in your faction. Like Fa is like that's what I'd pick as a priority. So Horus as the first one, Thoth as the second one, and then once you get the third one, go with Fa. Let's move on to Canaan, Hittites, Mesopotamians, and Aegean gods. Speaking about the Canaanite gods, well, the very best one would probably be El. Again, movement range, it's always going to be a really important thing. It's kind of weird to see some very different things from gods, but either way, you get desert attrition immunity, movement, and Cellar's chance plus 24%. The influence benefits and charge bonus on recruitment, not quite as important, but still some very useful benefits as well. So like L would be the first choice I would always go for. Then you got Asria, or however you pronounce her. She gives you happiness, she gives you workforce growth, she also gives you desert attrition immunity, and also reduces the upkeep of an army and reduces enemy happiness, as well as giving you a influence benefit when you're in enemy regions. Really, the benefit here is the workforce growth, very significant one, and also the upkeep one is also something you shouldn't ignore. Or you can go with Yam, who gives you happiness, recruitment cost, food benefit, and then for prayer you get a gold upkeep and bronze upkeep benefit over here. In terms of what I would consider the most useless one, it would probably have to be Baal over here as a god. Melee defense and influence on recruitment, not particularly great. Yes, you do gain a significant replenishment benefit, but here's the thing about that. The replenishment benefit, well, baseline replenishment is fairly good already, so unless you're fighting the most brutal, bloody battles in the game, and typically speaking, when you fight such a battle, you won't usually have a follow-up battle that will be just as bloody. So yeah, not quite as great, especially when you're thinking about the Canaanites, because like with Egypt, you might have a bunch of lighter units that take a lot of damage, but Canaan have medium units, so they won't take as much damage inherently. So kind of worthless over here in a lot of ways. Moloch, not particularly great. Yes, he does give you that workforce growth benefit and damage resistance versus missile, but here's the thing. Damage resistance versus missiles, one thing for the light infantry of Egypt. Not quite the same thing for Canaan. It's just not really a great thing. Morale, pretty high by the default. XP from battles, okay. And workforce growth could be useful, but we got this as Sarah over here, who is pretty good in that respect. So don't go for Baal or Moloch, and the other three are probably much better choices to go for. It starts with Hell. That movement range early on is going to be very significant. Sarah, probably your second one, and then Yam as your third one, especially once you're building up massive armies in your campaign. Although, if you want to resolve to a more extreme level, you could always go for Baal just for replenishment benefit, but it's kind of meaningless in a lot of ways, at least as the game is currently right now. Moving on to the Hittites, we have Arena as what I'd consider the best god overall of the Hittites. Typically speaking, I would obviously go for movement range, usually, but here's the thing. Arena gives you so many significant benefits that it's kind of hard to underestimate her. She reduces recruitment cost by minus 18% for own armies and province. That is a significant amount from the shrine, from a single shrine. Quite important. She increases happiness and gives you 12% food in a province. Very useful, very, very powerful. But more importantly, she gives you raiding income, resources from sacking, and resources from looting and occupying. Now, you may not want to sack that many settlements, but you may want to loot and occupy them for the sake of resources. Because post-battle loot can really keep you going in an entire campaign, even if you don't have the resources yourself. And to be clear, if you're playing a Hittite campaign, there is going to be a severe lack of a lot of resources. So that can be very, very useful. But on top of that, she also reduces the entire upkeep for the voted general by 21% and gives armor. The armor and morale and charge bonus benefits, not quite useful. The reason it's not useful, as I said, morale inherently is quite high in Pharaoh. Armor would be great for Egypt, sure, but not so great when you're playing the Hittites, who have some of the most heavily armored units in the entire freaking game. So not the best benefit overall, but honestly, I gotta say, the Hittite gods are not especially great. Like, you look at Kurtis, who would obviously be your second choice over here, because he gives you that movement speed, but it's lesser than what the Canaanites or Egyptians have, though you do still get, charge bonus speed, all that. So Kurtis is a decent enough god, but I just think like Arena's benefits in terms of post-battle loot or specifically when you're taking over a settlement, can be significant. Usually I would say you just want to occupy a settlement, but she's giving you so much income from sacking and looting. And funnily enough, she would be the perfect god for Seti because he has that command. Or you can randomize commands if you want to in a campaign. What would be the worst god for the Hittites? Probably Taruna or Kumarbi. The reason, actually, it would be Kumarbi, because, influence is not really that important. Melee damage and experience, okay, fair enough, but you don't really need that much experience necessarily. It's just like what people have discovered, and certainly from my experience, obviously you do want experience for units, but usually a lot of the enemy armies you'll deal with will not be so experienced. And experience doesn't give you that many benefits compared to other things. The thing about Hati, you gotta understand, Hati has genuinely the best army on the field. It's the resource problems that are gonna really screw them over. So that's one of the reasons Arena is so very good compared to all the others, because she can give you more resources. She can reduce your recruitment, she can reduce your upkeep, she can give you extra resources from sacking and looting settlements. So go for Arena. Obviously, if you're starting as Kurunta, you'll always have, if you're starting as Shupolima, you'll always have Arena. If you're starting as Kurunta, you will be worshipping yourself, weirdly enough. But you probably want to go Arena, Kurunta as gods. And the third one, honestly, I would not necessarily bother with a third one. I'd probably genuinely just try and get access to, a Canaanite god or Egyptian god or Aegean or Mesopotamian god, because they would actually offer more benefits in that. Maybe that's one of the things to be said about Hati. As I said, their gods are kind of weak in a lot of ways. You actually do want, economic benefits as Hati, not military benefits. That's one of the problems. Getting to the Mesopotamians, we do have Ashur as what I consider to be the very best option available. Now, what's different about the Mesopotamians as opposed to the Canaanite, Hittites, and the Egyptians is that they have dwellings. So both the Aegeans and the Mesopotamians do have a twist to how they worship their gods. Now, dwellings are structures you build in settlements, so you got to keep that in mind. But quite crucially about Ashur, he is the only god in Mesopotamia that does give you that workforce growth, not from dwellings like Ishtar, but from shrines. And you can build a shrine in every single region of a particular province. And workforce growth is so important, and the reason I push it so hard, the reason it's so important is every structure requires a workforce growth. So increasing that workforce growth through shrines is a significant benefit. The other benefits that Ashur gives you are not significant in any way, shape, or form, but that workforce growth more than makes up for it. In terms of other benefits, you could argue in favor of Inshu, because he does give you that movement range benefit in the campaign. So shrines, not really that important. Devoted general, 40% battle captives taken is useful. But the dwellings giving you 2 legitimacy each, pretty useful if you're looking to build up a significant amount of legitimacy. And the reason you want to build a lot of legitimacy doesn't actually have to do with winning the race to be the king of the universe in the Mesopotamian theater. It's rather to do with unlocking the various actions of the crown. So the first one you might want to go for, if you have that choice, would of course be Ashur. So yeah, I made mistakes in this particular campaign. But the second one you'd want to go for would be Inshu. And the third one, either Ninurta or Ishtar. There's benefits for either of them, be it the construction cost benefit for management and administration, as well as for Ninurta, the benefit of post-battle loot for a devoted general. Because post-battle loot money can be extremely important. So that leaves Marduk, who is easily the worst god of the Mesopotamian theater. He does give you immunity to attrition for a devoted general, but that's just one general, so not really the most tangible benefit in the world. And food, happiness are so plentiful in the game that you're not really going to struggle with either of those. Replenishment can be a bit useful, certainly so, but not really great benefits. As for the idea of a devoted general reducing the chance to die of an old age, even if you are playing a campaign where generals can die, and you're playing a fast campaign where you have one turn for 1 year, it's still a lot of turns for people to die of old age. And on top of that, if they are dying from old age, you may want them to die from old age, in particular if you're going with the lawmaker, the lawgiver, ancient legacy, because that's the only way to revoke laws that have been put in place. So just keep those kind of aspects in mind. So yeah, I would not go for Marduk in Mesopotamia. I would go for Ashur, I would go for Inshu, and then I would either go for Ninurta or Ishtar, depend on what you want to aim for, really. So yeah, mistakes were made. I probably will pick Ashur as the third god over here in this one. Or maybe just bite the bullet on workforce growth and go for Inshu. It's really going to come down to that. That leaves us with the final selection of gods in the game. Finally, we get to the Aegean, and here things are a bit more complicated because I would say none of them are especially strong, except Aphrodite, because of course this is following up Troy, where Aphrodite was the best god by far, and she still is the best god in quite a lot of ways, though there's plenty of choices to pick from. So let's look at Aphrodite. She does give you that food recruitment cost, not really relevant in any way, shape, or form, but quite crucially, she does give you two very significant benefits that you do want to take advantage of. One, she gives you that 10 workforce growth in a province per shrine, remember that. And two, she gives you for a prayer plus 16% battle captives taken. She also gives you happiness, so when you're taking over a province, it can be useful with a general if you have a prayer. And here's the thing about the Aegean gods. When you use a hecatomb, you can activate the prayer effect to all the generals in your faction. So you don't even need to build a shrine in enemy territory to get that kind of effect. So this is really powerful with her. Yes, the replenishment for the devoted general is not really that great, but battle captives, workforce growth, very significant, and you certainly will benefit to some extent, obviously, from the food recruitment. It's just that food is so plentiful that you don't really care about it. Another great choice would probably be Poseidon. Not for the food benefit or the influence benefit, but because he does give you 50% movement range at sea, and given all the sea that is in the Aegean, it's going to be pretty powerful. Like, the Aegean factions do deal with the sea more than others, so it makes a lot of sense for that. And having attrition immunity to the deep sea for a prayer, very powerful benefit. So I would say Aphrodite is the best, followed up by Poseidon. Wish I had figured that out when I started playing Aegean campaigns, but that's really on me. Apollo is pretty decent in some ways because he does give you that significant ammunition benefit and range lethality, but it's only for a devoted general. However, he does give you 10% missile damage on recruitment for all units with a shrine in a province. But yeah, you gotta feel the pain as Prime when you start worshipping Apollo. It makes sense. Apollo is the patron god of Troy, so it makes perfect sense. So who's the worthless? Well, surprisingly, I thought initially that Zeus would be very strong, but not really. I mean, he gives you the fatigue benefit, but the construction benefit and happiness benefit, not particularly great, so screw Zeus, more or less. Like, yeah, him or Ares. I'd probably say Ares is the worst by far. 1.5% lethality sounds great. It's not really that beneficial. And yes, you can reduce your recruitment costs and all that, but just like, yeah, I'd probably have to say Ares. Happiness is more important than influence. Like, influence is the most unimportant stat because there's so many ways so easily built up. So it's like not really worth it. Recruitment costs can be useful, but you know, I'd rather have either the food recruitment costs because a lot of units do cost a lot of food, or to get all of that wood that Poseidon gives you because you can trade that wood for other resources to recruit your unit. So yeah, either Zeus or Ares are the worst gods, with Aphrodite and Poseidon being the best. Apollo being good for one devoted general. So I'd say Apollo is like the third in line you'd probably want to get. So I would start with Aphrodite. No, you typically won't get that option. Certainly you won't get it for Priam and Agamemnon. But yeah, I would go with Aphrodite, I'd go with Poseidon, and then I'd go with Apollo. But, you know, as Agamemnon, you'd start with Zeus, so you'd unlock Aphrodite and Poseidon, most likely. And that is it for the gods of a Total War Saga Troy. Let me know what you guys think about all of this, and which gods you do like, and for what reasons. And I'll see you next time.